This is a Blaze Radio production.
We're covering Who's on Deck,
hitting the ice on the hockey scene,
and hosting a racing roundtable.
This is sports.
This is news.
This is everything you need to know about the future.
This is the Scoutin' Session.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. We are glad to have you here on this Wednesday for the third episode of the Scoutin' Session, where we talk up-and-coming sports stars, highlight young standout performances at the professional level. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. My name is Noah Reed, and we are very, very excited to welcome in our first ever guest to the studio. So all the listeners out there, please welcome Joey Andrews. I'm also joined by my regular co-panel,
Ella Wolter-Sánchez.
And Jordan Talley.
Thank you, guys. We're going to roll right on into this interview. So just want to give you guys a little bit background on Joey. Athletes, they got the need to chase speed and perfection. 20-year-old Joey Andrews of Los Angeles, California is no exception. Andrews first strapped into the seat of an indoor go-kart at just age 11. After he won the 2024 Mazda MX-5 shootout, Andrews is one of the top motorsports prospects in the nation. So the first question I want to ask you is about your nickname, actually. You have a very interesting nickname that you told me about right away. Why don't you tell everyone how you dubbed yourself as the Stiglet?
Yeah, so for those who don't know, the Stiglet is kind of my nickname persona, what I go by when I'm at the track. People just say, hi Stig, hi Stiggy. But essentially, when I first started getting into cars and racing, I was watching the show Top Gear. And on Top Gear, their test driver is called the Stig. And the Stig was this mysterious character who, he always drove all the cars really fast, but you never knew who he was. He was always in a suit and helmet. And I said to myself, that's really cool. I want to be the Stig. And so when I was coming up on my brand in social media back when I was, I think I was like 12 or 13 years old, I was like, what do I want to call myself? And I was like, you know what? Let's not just be Joey Andrews. Let's be the Stiglet. And that's what I've aspired to this day and stick with the name.
All right. When you were 17, you transitioned to outdoor karting and you discovered the Spec Miata program. So that's where you got your racing license. So just kind of talk about how that program propelled your career forward.
Yeah, so I raced indoor karts when I was 14, switched to outdoor karting, and that's where my racing career really took off. But it wasn't until I moved to cars when I was 17 and 18 where everything really took a turn, and I would say the spiraling effect of my career's growth started to happen. So the biggest change for me, obviously, moving into car racing was the logistics were a lot more complicated. The competition was a lot better, and now it was a case of, okay, you know, a racing career is really possible. You know, now we're no longer racing go-karts. It's real. You know, we're in cars, we're on the big tracks, we're going to circuits that are very well known. And my first year in car racing was definitely challenging. There were a lot of eye-opening moments where I was like, wow, there's a lot to learn. But then year two in 2024, that's where things really, really started great. You know, we hit the ground running straight with a win, ended up winning the championship in Southern California. And the highlight to that, of course, was being invited to the Mazda Spec MX-5 shootout.
Well, you touched on it right there. You said 2024 was your breakout year. You said the few wins early on, and just kind of wanted to talk a little bit of a sidestep here about the Spec Miata program and sliding over to the MX-5, our Fast Fact segment of the week, where we kind of give listeners a little bit of a background either about a car or a series, just different kinds of racing tracks. So that this week's Fast Fact is going to be kind of on the line of the MX-5 car. I want you to kind of break down what exactly an MX-5 car is and what makes it different from other road racing cars.
Yeah, so the Mazda MX-5, you may have heard of. It's a very popular road car, and as Mazda famously says, and it's very true, there is no car raced around the world more on any given weekend than a Mazda MX-5. So in the US, they're commonly known as the Miata, but around the world, they're known as the MX-5. And so what Mazda's created in America is a sports car racing ladder system for young drivers to progress from coming out of karting, working their way through amateur racing, all the way into pro-level racing. So the ladder essentially consists of 3 different cars that race in 3 different series. So Spec Miata is the first and second generation chassis, known as the NA and the NB. And Spec Miata as a series is regionally based. So you can run with a sanctioning body like NASA or SCCA. And these are vintage cars. You know, they're over 30 years old. But the point of that is, you know, they're very driver focused in the fact that there's no driving assistance. You know, the only feature you have on those cars of interesting technology is power brakes. There's no traction control, no ABS. It's a manual gearbox. The cars are super lightweight, very underpowered. And so it really forces you as a driver to learn how to drive these cars. The next step, of course, is Spec MX-5, which completely changes the game because now you're moving to a car that's 20 years newer in technology. It's a lot faster, and this is the 3rd generation Mazda MX-5, known as the NC. So that's chassis 2006, 2015. And Spec MX-5 is a completely different level of racing. You're now traveling across the country to race in a series called the SCCA Super Tour, and you're now racing against the best young drivers in the country on America's biggest circuits. And then, of course, the level above that is the Pro Racing Series Mazda MX-5 Cup, which races in IMSA and also shares a few race wings with IndyCar as well. And in that series, you're now in the pro level paddock. You're racing drivers who not only are, people like me who are aspiring to have careers in endurance racing, but you also have drivers in that series who race in it professionally, as they come back from multiple seasons. Guys like Jared Thomas and Gresham Wagner, who've been there for a long time and are absolute amazing professional drivers.
Jordan, I saw you nodding your head there in the studio when he talked about the Super Tour. What have you kind of heard from this conversation so far that you've kind of seen from what you've watched on the open wheel European side?
I mean, it's just awesome. I'm just sitting here nodding. I just like racing. It's so fast paced. It's just a fun experience to watch anyway. So this is beyond my level of knowledge, but it's just cool to sit here and listen to it pretty much. That's all that I'm nodding about.
Well, and Ella, you're over here learning about all the different stuff that goes into the specs of an MX-5. What has been kind of your biggest surprise, if anything, from this conversation so far?
I definitely think it's really interesting. I mean, not that it's been in this conversation so far, but the fact that I feel like a lot of athletes you hear about drop out of college and aren't necessarily in school. And for those of you who don't know, Joey's actually at Cronkite at our college. So how is that really balancing the two? Because I know many people either if they're athletes, they play for the school. And so they're easily able to balance the two. Or if they're athletes, they simply don't do school at all. So how are you able to?
And one of the reasons I chose Cronkite was they were one of the few schools who was willing to work with me on my schedule. I was very clear to them. I was like, I need Fridays off. These are the weekends I expect to be traveling. Yeah, I'm probably going to be missing a lot of school, but they said we can make this work. And the biggest thing I think that makes it work on both sides is Mazda's very understanding in their program that, because they're the only manufacturer supporting young drivers, at this level and helping them progress, they're okay with having flexibility and willing to work with me. And the same with ASU with Cronkite. So when you have both teams that are willing to work with me, I'm able to make it work. And yeah, there's a lot of madness to it, a lot of crazy hour flights. The 5 a.m. flights are not fun, but, it's happening. You got to do what you got to do. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, you made a couple of big sacrifices last year. The MX-5 program that you talked about being at the shootout, Homestead Miami Speedway, which for those who are aware of the racing scene in Northern America, Homestead Miami is no slouch of a speedway. It's a beautiful racing facility. I just want you to kind of briefly walk us through the weekend and what it meant to you to finally, have that breakthrough moment and become a Mazda factory driver for 2025.
Yeah, the shootout was definitely very surreal when I arrived. It's an event that everyone in the Mazda paddocks all across the, North America and now across the world, they talk about it this is the event you want to get invited to. So when I got the email saying I was, one of the drivers who was nominated for the initial selection process, I was like, holy moly, I'm on the radar. This is cool. And then, I filled out the application, submitted my video, submitted my CV, explained why I'd be a good fit for the brand. And then you wait 2 weeks and then, they do the announcement of the call announcing the 12 drivers who were going. And I was driver number 11 on the list. So I was a little nervous. And I remember when I showed up to Homestead, I was like, okay, we're on, a properly famous track now. And I'm here with some of the best drivers in the country and in the world. And it was really cool because I was like, this is what I've been aiming for. And we're here now. And of course, that first day, you're not even driving on track. You're just doing your seat fit. You're meeting everyone. You're learning how the event's going to work. And then, the next 2 days are going to be some of the most intense days in your career. And if you win it, ultimately life-changing.
Yeah, and you were able to win, and so now you are a Mazda MX-5, sports car driver, and so you're going to be actually competing in 6 race schedule at historic venues like Road Atlanta, Virginia International Raceway, the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course. So kind of talk about your 2025 plans. I know you've kind of already gotten going a little bit, but what's on your calendar, and what are you most excited for?
Yeah, there's a lot to look forward to, and 2025 is interesting for me because I'm driving for 2 different teams with 2 different cars. So before I even knew about the shootout in terms of me being nominated, my plan was initially to move to Spec MX-5 anyways. So we ended up buying a car, and I selected to run with Advanced Autosports for the 2025 season. But then obviously when I won the shootout, now the situation came up of, okay, I'm going to be driving for the Mazda factory team in their car. for a select number of races. So the plan with the Mazda team is we're going to be running at Road Atlanta in March, VAR in April, May is going to be Mid-Ohio, June is going to be Road America, and then again the championship finale with Mazda at Road America in the end of September. But then in addition, with my car, with Advanced Auto Sports, we did a weekend of testing at Homestead in January, following up with the first round at Sebring 2 weeks ago, and then I'll be running at Watkins Glen later in the year with them. So we're getting to hit some of the big name tracks, and I think the biggest thing I'm honestly looking forward to is, racing on these absolute bucket list tracks and, being able to represent the Mazda brand there. It's no longer like, okay, it never was a hobby for me, but it kind of felt like, okay, I'm just showing up, I'm driving, I'm doing my best, we'll see what happens. But now it's like I'm representing a big name manufacturer at these big tracks.
Well, like you said there, you're representing Mazda, and we wish you the best in 2025. Thank you so much for joining us on today's edition of the Scoutin' Session. That's all the time we have for, again, Joey Andrews. Follow him on Instagram at The Stiglet, and he's got an amazing YouTube channel where you can check out some of the in-cars. We're going to slide on over to break. We will be back with the second half of the show after a few messages.
Are you looking for a new perspective on West Coast sports? Well, I'm here to help you. I'm Jordan Pillett, host of the Specific Sports Show, exclusively on BlazeRadioOnline.com. This show is specifically about Pacific Coast sports, including the NBA, NFL, NCAA football and basketball, baseball, and more. Tune in every Friday from 11:30 to noon on BlazeRadioOnline.com to start your Friday afternoon and weekend off right.
Welcome to the land of Faerun, the magical world behind Dungeons and Dragons. My name is Anyanfak McDaniels, and I'm your dutiful guide, bringing you the lore and legends of Faerun every single week. So unload your equipment and take a seat at the tavern, adventurers, for Traveler's Guide to Faerun. Every Wednesday at 7 p.m., only on Blaze Radio.
It's time for the Beatdown on Blaze Radio. From 9 to 9:30 Thursday nights, Sam Goodman, Seth Gillespie, and Will Marietta take a deep dive into the ever-changing landscape of the UFC.
Tune in for updates, analysis, and commentary on the #1 combat sport in the world.
And of course, you can't forget the Conor McGregor tweet of the week on the Beatdown on Blaze Radio.
This is what I wanted. It's what I've been waiting for these cars to come off of this corner. And guys, it's showtime. Boogity, boogity, boogity. Ooh, let's go racing today, boys.
Are you a racing fan or want to learn more about the sport? Join Cooper Burns, Henry Dominy, and Eric List every Thursday afternoon from 2 to 3 p.m. Mountain Standard Time on Blaze Radio as they discuss all things NASCAR, F1, dirt racing, and more on Fuel for Thought.
And we are back here for the Scoutin' Session after the break. Thanks again to Joey Andrews for joining us today. We're going to throw it right on back to Ella with Who's on Deck.
Welcome back, everyone. For Who's on Deck this week, we have Jordan Lawler. So the annual prospect list for baseball came out recently, and 2 Arizona Diamondbacks players were on the list. Normally, there's not too many players. We don't have the greatest farm system recently, but shortstop Jordan Lawler and second baseman Demetrio Crisantes were on the list. And Jordan Lawler has been in the national spotlight for quite some time. He was ranked 11th by MLB Pipeline and 13th by Baseball America. He was the only Diamondback prospect in the top 100 in 2024. He unfortunately had an injury-riddled 2024 season, so it wasn't as hoped. However, he's still considered a top-shelf prospect nationally. So for some history, he was born July 17th, 2002 in Carlton, Texas. He started playing baseball around age 5, so always been a lifeline baseball player. He attended Jesuit College Preparatory School of Dallas in Dallas, Texas. He obviously played for their baseball team and started for the varsity team as a sophomore in 2019. His sophomore stats included a .409 batting average with 5 home runs. The next year, his junior year, he hit .485 with 1 home run and 13 RBIs. However, following timelines, this is now 2020, and this season got cut short due to COVID. However, that summer he played in the Perfect Game All-American Classic and was named the Jackie Robinson Perfect Game Player of the Year. So I think everybody here knows who Jackie Robinson was. The award is named after the former Brooklyn Dodger and MLB Hall of Famer, among many other things. This is awarded annually to the top high school baseball player in the United States by perfect game, and Lawler received it as a junior in high school. I know we've talked about perfect game scores before, but no one I've ever talked about has received this award, and I thought it was quite insane that he received it as a junior. And other notable winners of this award include, but are not limited to, Bobby Witt Jr., Bryce Harper, and Justin Upton. And for his senior year in 2021, Lawler went to hit .412 with 6 home runs, 37 RBIs, and 32 stolen bases. That year, he was named the Gatorade Baseball Player of the Year and was committed to play at Vanderbilt University, which is a very top university for baseball. Some notable alumni include Dansby Swanson. However, in the summer of 2021, he decided to enter the draft and was selected by the Arizona Diamondbacks as the 6th pick of the first round. And for some context, the amateur draft in baseball, which is officially known as the Major League Baseball, First-Year Player Draft, Rule 4 Draft, or the MLB Draft, is held every year among the 30 Major League Baseball clubs. And a fun fact, so I was doing this originally with a different player, not gonna lie, so that's why I was doing some more explaining with the draft. But I was looking through the draft, and baseball hasn't always had a draft. Baseball's obviously been around for a very long time. But the very first draft was held on June 8th, 1965, and the first player to be, quote-unquote, drafted to the MLB was outfielder Rick Monday by the Kansas City Athletics out of ASU.
Wow.
And so I thought that was really cool. Yeah. Anyway, now back to Lawler. He signed a $6.7 million bonus after being drafted. After his debut with the rookie-level Arizona Complex League D-backs, he had his injured left shoulder and went through season-ending surgery. And before I've kind of explained the farm system and such, the Complex League Diamondbacks are a professional baseball league competing as an affiliate, and this team is composed of mostly players who are on their first year of professional baseball as draftees of undrafted free agents from the United States and beyond. Through the 2022 season, he battled more injuries, and stayed on low A teams. In 2023, he was promoted to the Reno Aces, and this is the highest team under the D-backs. Normally, when they send players down and they're going back and forth, they go between the Aces and the Diamondbacks. He was selected to the 40-man roster on September 6, 2023, and this was his first big league promotion. During his rookie run, he batted .206 with no home runs or RBIs. And to start off 2024, Lawler was in Reno and ended the season with a thumb injury. And following his recovery, he announced he would play in the Dominican League for the winter, something a lot of players do who don't get a lot of time playing in the spring or just want more time playing in the off-season, since it is a pretty long off-season. Now, he is ranked in the preseason as number 190 prospect by The Athletic, or I don't think that's where he's at. And he's a player who has a lot of potential, an impressive resume, and he honestly just needs to figure out how to deal with his injuries. And I just thought that obviously he's a young player just like everybody else we talk about. And I just thought, impressive resume, but unfortunately somebody that has been dealt a bad hand when it comes to injuries, like some star players are.
Yeah, I think this is actually really important to highlight another young prospect that didn't have the cut and dry career when it comes to getting to the MLB. So this is definitely a very important story to highlight.
Yeah, and as someone who's a history buff, I actually really appreciated you going back and explaining the draft, because I actually wasn't aware that the MLB didn't do a draft. And when I did a little double take as I was reading the Kansas City Athletics, and so I Googled where else they'd played. I didn't know they were playing in Philly. They also played in Oakland, and I guess now they're in my hometown of Sacramento. So
Rest
sometime
in peace to the Oakland A's.
Yeah, they will hopefully find a home where they can really settle down. But
yes,
again, it's really cool that you've highlighted, again, also explaining the different farm systems. I know we kind of touched on it a little bit last show, but as someone who has a little brother who absolutely loves baseball, he appreciates me actually having somewhat of a knowledge of the sport now. And so he actually just had tryouts. So shout out to my little brother. Hopefully everything goes well with him. But yeah, we're going to slide on over to Hit the Ice. Jordan, take this one away.
All right. This week's prospect is 2009-born defenseman out of Calgary, Alberta, Canada, Landon Dupont. I know I saw 2009 and I was like, oh, Okay.
Yeah, my eyes just got as wide as saucers.
Wow.
This 15-year-old defenseman was granted exceptional status last season before the WHL draft, allowing him to play in the CHL at an earlier age. So again, for some context, CHL, or the Canadian Hockey League rules, dictate that players ages 16 to 20 are allowed to play, with 15-year-olds only being allowed to play if granted exceptional status by Hockey Canada. And he was given that award last year before the draft, and he went first overall pick in the WHL draft to the Everett Silvertips, so my foes out west. As a defenseman, DuPont is putting up a little more than a point per game with 11 goals, 35 assists, and 46 total points in 43 games played in his first season in the WHL. So, yeah, he was just drafted and immediately going out pretty much a point per game, which is crazy, especially he's 15. He's not eligible for the draft for a couple more years, which is crazy to think about. But before the WHL, DuPont played at a prep school in Calgary where he was constantly putting up the numbers. Last season, he had 62 points in just 30 games played with 19 goals and 43 assists and set the CSSHL U18 single-season scoring record with 62 points at 14 years old.
Dang.
He turned 16 this year. So he turned 15 last year before the draft. When he was granted exceptional status, he was 14.
Wow.
That's actually mind-boggling. I haven't seen this in a hot minute. Even Gavin McKenna, he wasn't granted exceptional status either.
What have I done with my life?
Well, I mean, I'm thinking, I was kind of a little bit in thought, I'm about to be 19 here in a couple of weeks. And I was thinking, man, 5 years ago was so long ago, but I was thinking about how immature and to be playing in the WHL, which from everything you've told me is an incredibly professional and, you have to be composed and you got to have a good head on your shoulder.
Yes.
And so this young man, looks like everything going for him at the moment.
In the playoffs last year with his Edge Prep School, he had 5 goals, 11 assists, and just 5 games played. Also, keep in mind, he is a defenseman. He's not a forward. He's not the guys scoring goals all the time. He's not Connor McDavid. He's not Gavin McKenna, Connor Bedard. All those guys are offensive forwards. He's a defenseman. And it's just, I was just in shock when I was looking up his elite prospects earlier. Along with these impressive numbers, him and his team took home the championship, and he was named, here's the long list, CSSHL U18 First All-Star Team, CSSHL U18 Most Points by a Defenseman, CSSHL U18 Playoff MVP, and CSSHL U18 Top Defenseman out of the whole playoff tournament and everything. And wow. I think that's actually the whole high school season there as well. Like a lot of the guys we cover up north, he also participated in the U17 WHC International Tournament representing Team Canada and was named the WHC U18 All-Star Team, as well as taking home the silver medal. He is considered a strong offensive defenseman and is early comparisons, granted, he is 15. He's getting his first years as development in the WHL. Early comparisons are Vancouver's Quinn Hughes, Colorado's Cale Makar, and Buffalo's Bowen Byram, who were all defensemen taken in the top 7 picks of their respective draft years. Bowen Byram also played in the WHL for the Vancouver Giants, and with having an offensive style compared to Connor Bedard, who I've also mentioned a handful of times on the show, first overall draft pick in 2023 to the Chicago Blackhawks, who also played in the WHL for the Regina Pats. The 5'11", 15-year-old is considered the first overall draft pick in the 2027 NHL draft. Once again, just goes to show how young he is and how much development he has still to come at only his 15 years of age. So my segment this week is Face Off, where tonight DuPont faces off against the previous prospect and WHL superstar Gavin McKenna, as the projected first overall draft picks in their respective draft classes face off for the first time in their careers as the Medicine Hat Tigers travel to Pacific Northwest to take on the Everett Silvertips tonight at 8:05 p.m. Once again, I know this segment is all about Landon DuPont, but once again, all roads come back to McKenna. He is just out there tearing it up on those semi-pro ice. And just a quick check-in on McKenna. Since we've last talked about McKenna, he has added 2 goals and 11 assists to his score sheet, giving him having him at 79 total points, currently leading his team in points and assists with 79 and 57. And the Medicine Hat Tigers are currently on a 10-game win streak. So we'll see how these unfamiliar foes face out tonight, as they are both very, very high in the WHL standings. So, yeah.
I mean, it sounds like we've got ourselves a game to watch. I mean, this is, I don't know. I love this segment, by the way. Face Off, it makes perfect sense. Beautifully crafted. Any final thoughts, Ella?
No, I just also like how we've all crafted our own little segments. I think it's so funny.
Yeah,
but no, it sounds amazing. I mean, I can't believe 15 years old. I'm also thinking about myself at 15 years old, and I do not think I would even have the athleticism to, I mean, I don't have it now, but I certainly didn't have it 3-4 years ago, and it's just insane, and it's incredible to see stories like this, and I'm glad we have a show to expose them.
And one thing I also forgot to mention, he is the first WHL player to be granted exceptional status since Connor Bedard 5 years ago now. Wow, in 2020. So yeah, lot to look up for this kid. He's got a lot going for him. Can't wait to see how this heated matchup will go tonight, because that'll be a game to watch. So yeah.
Yeah, and once again, thanks again to Joey Andrews for joining us on the show. If you're just tuning in now, head on back to our YouTube channel, and we will give you that full show. For Noah Reed,
Ella Wolter-Sánchez,
and Jordan Talley,
this is the Scoutin' Session. We will see you all next week.